This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Jamie Glazov Moment. Tonight, Lindsay Lohan was racially profiled, quote unquote, for wearing the hijab. I don't know if you've been following this, my friends. Actor Lindsay Lohan announced on a TV show recently just how freaked out she was that she was, quote unquote, racially profiled by airport security at Heathrow Airport in London. And by the way, she didn't mean that it's because she's white. So where do we begin with this? First, I would like to say this. Lindsay Lohan, just by coincidence, if you're watching this, you're white, okay? You're white. Let's just get this across to you. So here's another clue, another tip for you. Your racial identity, who you are racially, ethnically, does not change once you put the hijab on. You don't turn a different color. You don't turn into a different race once you become a different religion. And in this case, let's say if you became Muslim or if you're just wearing the hijab. But Lindsay Lohan says she was racially profiled because airport security apparently made an issue out of her hijab temporarily, maybe asked her to take it off for a second in terms of security. You know, I don't really know where to begin here, but I want to say a couple things this evening. But I like to wear a hat, for instance, sometimes, especially when I'm traveling through Canada. You can imagine, but this is another issue. But when I'm asked to take my hat off, I've never felt racially profiled. I've never felt violated or offended. I kind of keep in mind that you see 9/11 kind of happened, right? And there's certain people who want to get into the territory of Western civilization through flying planes. And then they want to kind of do things like, let me see, use chemical and biological weapons, maybe even WMDs. Who knows what certain terrorists are planning these days. And perhaps it's okay to ask people to take off a head covering and do other things just to protect Western civilization. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, just a possibility. But anyway, Lindsay Lohan was very violated, apparently, and she's really freaked out. She was racially profiled, quote unquote. And then afterwards, Lindsay, during the interview, she was saying that she's really concerned for, how other women are going to feel that are going to be asked to take off their hijab if they're going through certain airports. And, their feelings might be really hurt, and it might be really, really hurtful and offensive or whatever it is that she's implying. Here's a couple things I want to say. Lindsay Lohan, just in case you're watching this, have you ever heard of Aqsa Parvez? 16-year-old Muslim girl that was murdered, suffocated by her father and her brother in Toronto years back for not wearing the hijab. Do you care about what happens to Muslim women, to Muslim girls who have the courage, who dare to resist the mandates of the Quran, the mandates of Islam, to hide themselves as human beings? Do you have any care or worry or compassion or sympathy for these women and girls who happen to be Muslim, who are killed, who are maimed, who are mutilated, who have acid thrown in their faces, and we could just go on and on about this issue? Do you care about these Muslim women and girls? Because if you actually took a piece of paper on each side and had two columns, and you wanted to add up the oppression of women for wearing the hijab in the West, and by the way, you'd have to throw out a large, significant percentage of the fake hoax crimes that are every day being delegitimized, that apparently this happened. Then it turned out that it didn't. But let's say something really did happen, that there was oppression for wearing a hijab in the West. But then you had the column next to it in terms of what happens to women in the Muslim world who don't wear the hijab and what's happened to them. You know, I challenge Lindsay Lohan and all the apologists in terms of the hijab on this level to make these two columns. Let me just give a suggestion to those people who don't know. Look up Muslim women killed, oppressed for not wearing hijab. Robert Spencer. Just Google it. Because Robert Spencer, a leading scholar of Islam, wonderful person, great scholar, tremendously empathetic and sympathetic humanitarian who actually, aside from what the left says, cares about Muslim people. And this is what motivates much of what he does, because jihad and Sharia makes victims of non-Muslims and Muslims alike. But look it up, because Robert Spencer has documented the horrifying fates of Muslim women, Muslim girls, and of course also non-Muslim, who have dared not to wear the hijab and what has happened to them. And I think that maybe Lindsay Lohan should spend a little bit of time studying this, since she's so worried about human rights. But let me get to the next issue here. Where does this come from, by the way, this apparent racial profiling that has occurred? What does this mean? You know, I'm a little bit confused. What race is Islam again? Because somehow race is involved here. But the last time I checked, Islam, perhaps you can correct me, or maybe I've missed out on something, but I thought that Islam was a religion slash ideology. And there's another argument there, because there's a strong argument to be made that it's an ideology. But where does race come into this? I mean, I know white people that are Muslim. I know black people that are Muslim. I know Asian people that are Muslim. I mean, I know Arab people that are Muslim. What race is Islam exactly? How did this start, that when a person says something truthful about Islam that might not be complimentary, they might actually be repeating something that they read in the Quran? For instance, let's say I read Surah 9:5, and I was a little bit uncomfortable with the command to slay unbelievers wherever you find them. You know, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that because I'm a non-Muslim. And, you know, I don't know, it just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Sort of Surah 47:4, you know, because when ISIS chops the heads off of the people that they don't consider good, like unbelievers and apostates and whoever else that they kill, but they point to 47:4 because it says, smite them at the necks wherever you find them. And they're referring to unbelievers. Since I'm a non-Muslim, like, sorry, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with an ideology that teaches the people who follow it that I should have my neck chopped off. But the way our society works now in terms of boundaries of discourse and the boundaries of debate and what's allowed to be said and not allowed to be said, my discomfort with having my head chopped off somehow makes me a racist. And this is what the Unholy Alliance has done. They're very successful. And by the way, the Unholy Alliance, it's the alliance between the left and Islamic supremacists. You want to learn about this? Read Unholy Alliance by David Horowitz. Read my book, United in Hate. But there's an alliance now between Islamic supremacism and the left, and they're molding the boundaries of our discourse very, very successfully. And so there's all this propaganda now. They're twisting everything. And so they've succeeded now. They've succeeded that when somebody says something truthful about jihad, something truthful about Sharia, if somebody's concerned about the threat of Sharia or jihad or something that could be in the Hadith or the Quran that actually might be a little bit scary, for instance, you know, the mandate and the command to take sex slaves in terms of Surah 4:3 and Surah 33:50. I mean, somehow the way that the Unholy Alliance has shaped the boundaries of discourse, you are now a racist, right? But I just want to get this out there, and for people like Lindsay Lohan that are now brainwashed and following this, Islam is not a race. The Unholy Alliance has succeeded in racializing Islam. And this is a very shrewd, very brilliant tactic on their part to achieve their evil agenda, and we should not be surrendering to this. And so when somebody like Lindsay Lohan imagines that she's somehow being racially profiled because she's wearing the hijab, we need to call this out immediately, and we need to fight this culture war and be stressing constantly that Islam is not a race, it's an ideology, and it is not being racist to actually be concerned about a totalitarian ideology and what it preaches. I just want to throw this out there. How does it fit when ex-Muslims who are dark-skinned are criticized by pro-Islam forces? In other words, if Mona Walter, heroic woman from Africa who has turned to Christianity and left Islam, Hirsi Ali, who happens to also be from Africa and is dark-skinned, these are ex-Muslims. Are the people who apologize and defend Islam, who criticize Hirsi Ali and Mona Walter, are they racist now? Because of if you criticize an ex-Muslim, you're racist. This also it all gets very complicated in terms of this whole pathology of what the Unholy Alliance has done. Final point: why Lindsay Lohan is saying this. This is connected. Again, the Unholy Alliance's success in terms of molding the boundaries of our discourse, how it's distorted everything. There's now this notion, not only are you racist when you're concerned about the teachings of Islam, now you also hate all Muslims, period, regardless of race. So if you're concerned about, let's say, Surah 4:3, that tells Muslims that they have a right to take sex slaves if the girl or woman is a kufr, an unbeliever. If you actually articulate a concern about that, somehow you hate all Muslim people. This is the conflation. This is what the Unholy Alliance has done. It's conflated Muslims with Islam. You say something about Islam, somehow you hate all Muslim people. Again, this is complete BS. It's a distortion. It's a propaganda lie. And where this really comes from, whoever believes in this, by the way, and I have a lot of people in my own life who believe this. Like I'll be saying something about how, Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old and consummated the marriage when she was 9. And I'm not making this up, by the way. This is what Islamic sources tell us. A person will tell me, Jamie, do you hate all Muslims? Well, why are you against all Muslim people? And this is incredible. I never said anything about all Muslim people. I'm simply saying what the Islamic texts say about the life of Muhammad. But the Unholy Alliance has done this. It's conflated Islam with Muslims. One of the best people to go read, Raymond Ibrahim, a scholar of Islam. Google conflation of Muslims and Islam with Raymond Ibrahim, and you will see this propaganda lie, and he exposes all the falsehoods here. And just very quickly, I just want to say here that whoever believes this, whoever starts saying that you somehow have a problem with all Muslims, if you say the truth about Islam, and by the way, CNN and MSNBC do this every night. This is now just the mantra of our society and culture because they've accepted this leftist lie. This is a totalitarian mindset. Anybody that says this has accepted the totalitarian mindset because the implication here is that all people within an environment where there's an ideology automatically accept that ideology. And this is a lie. Those of us who believe in freedom and believe in the individual, we know not all people are the same. So, for instance, I know there are many Muslim people in my life, including at my work that I work with. And these are people who go by the label of Muslim. They were born into the Muslim world. They were never given a choice whether they wanted to be Muslim or not. Many of them don't follow the commands of the Quran. Many of them don't know about the commands of the Quran. Many of them want to reform the commands of the Quran. So many different Muslim people. And overall, all the counter-jihadists I know, the truth tellers of Islam, and we love Muslim people. We love all people. We have a problem with a certain ideology and the devout Muslims who might be following that ideology. But we are very well aware that there are many Muslims who do not. So this conflation of Islam and Muslims, a distortion, it's a propaganda lie. And it gets back to also the racialization of Islam and it ends with why Lindsay Lohan is spouting this this moronic just silliness, but also a very sinister lie about being racially profiled at Heathrow Airport when she's white. Just to finish before I go, Lindsay Lohan, I would advise you, because it seems that you're flirting with Islam. You might be converting to Islam soon. I don't know the whole story. I follow the narrative a little bit, following what you're doing. I just want to give you a little heads up. Look into apostasy laws. Look into what happens to many Muslims who dare to leave Islam. Look up what apostasy laws are and what the commands of Islam say should be done to people who leave Islam. And so the fact that you might want to enter Islam, you do whatever you want. Just a little heads up. The day that you might want to leave might be slightly problematic. So just think about it a little bit and look into apostasy laws. You know, there's a song out there that ends, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. See you on the next Jamie Glazov moment. Good night.